Hello. So I am a student, I am a designer, and I am now a presenter who's going to be sharing with you today about how to give a brand presentation and how to sell a client on what you've made for them. So a little bit about me is I am a junior at KU, majoring in visual communication design. And I have had about 3 years experience presenting as a freelance designer as well as in a marketing firm with an internship. So I've kind of seen both sides and how they both operate a little differently. As a journalism student, you may be wondering how this applies to you. And so I kind of thought of it as how design and journalism are both kind of client-based media. So you're selling something kind of to your reader or to your client, and you want them to like it because ultimately it leads to you being paid. And having these good references, kind of building your network, can also lead to career opportunities in the future. And so I think it's important to kind of keep up that good aura just in the field, but also that experience. So, my first point is kind of the presentation itself, what it looks like, and kind of how it's the package of what you're actually trying to show your client. I think something to keep in mind is keep it very simple because the presentation is not actually what you're trying to show them. It's the designs, it's just kind of the box that carries it all. And so keeping it black and white, I think works best. I think the color should be the pops where your designs actually are. I also think one or two fonts works best. I like to particularly use a mono-weight font, so it's something that kind of reads like code. There's a section on Illustrator with mono-weight fonts or Adobe or anything, but they're just fonts that are very similar to code, and so it's kind of just sharing the information but not adding or subtracting because it's just like a neutral font. I also wanted to show examples that do use color correctly, and I think that's ones that are marketing firms, bigger firms, or like something that's already established, like Facebook, Uber, or Airbnb. And so they have a color that's kind of distinct to them that we all know goes with them. And so it's okay that they use that color. Personally, I think as freelance, you don't really need to use color because it's not as well known. If like you use orange a lot, like your clients might not know that. So there's not really a point of putting that color in your slides because it's not really associated with you. It's a little different. I also think, as Benson said before, but do not share your slides. That's essentially giving away all the work you've done before you even gotten paid. And so you probably want to prepare like a takeaway document for your clients that you'll print out and hand to them before the presentation so that they still can see what your presentation looked like afterwards and they can discuss it internally before they make a final decision, obviously. But if you give them the physical file, they can very easily just give that to a different studio if you're kind of trying to compete for that client, or and that other studio might do it cheaper, and so all of your work's kind of gone away. I have actually had that happen before, freshman year, before I kind of knew how the whole brand space worked, and I just kind of gave away all my files way too early, and then I never got paid for my work, and it just stinks to put in all that effort and not actually get paid for it. So make sure that you keep your files until kind of the end when you're done with the presentation. You can just give them the printed sheet, or now since everything's online, you could just send them like a very simple document. Also, you might not expect it, but people like to take pictures while you're presenting. And if you could, it's kind of awkward to just ask them to refrain from taking pictures and say that you'll share that takeaway document with them. I think that's what works best. I know people want to take pictures, but ultimately it's another way that they're just keeping your work for themselves. So the next point I want to make is like how to actually make that sell once you've made the designs and the different concepts you should show. So I kind of reference Alex Anderson. He's one of my teachers at KU, and he's a freelancer himself. He's worked for Dropbox, Wired, ESPN, and he's kind of taught me everything I need to know about branding, about design, how to share my work once it's done. That's just where I've learned all this information from, so I wanted to make sure that he got his credit. So I think it's very important when you're presenting to show three very, very different concepts. And so different color palettes, different fonts, different line qualities, just kind of make sure you've kind of touched different ends of the spectrum so that the client can make an easier decision if you show them things that all look exactly the same. they might have a hard time differentiating what they really do like and what they don't like. Also, if you show only 2, that only gives them 2 options, and it's kind of like a choice, like which one do you like better, but maybe you just really dislike one. But if you give them too many, that kind of broadens it too much, and they might have way too much to say that's not helpful. So I think 3 is a good number. Also, so I wanted to show kind of something I've been working on because I think it gives it context of me just saying what these look like is actually showing what they look like. And so this is work I did for Rocky Mountain National Park. They have a tundra initiative to kind of make sure people aren't walking on the tundra and just to protect it. And so each of these does have green in it. That's one thing that does tie them all together, but it's different shades of green with the other colors. And so I like to show the logo first, and then like secondary logos, icons, imagery, something that adds to that brand that's very essential, and then what those logos look like on their color palette. If you just put up the color palette without any reference of what that color palette means, it might be confusing. So showing the logos on top of the color palette, I think is very helpful for the client. I also think it's important to show these kind of like simply without too much on the screen at first, because if you get too crazy too fast, you can kind of lose detail. Your next slides would often be kind of how you apply that. And so how it looks on something print, on a physical product, and then on social media or something digital is how I like to do it. The digital helps show photo. The print item kind of makes it feel real, like it's an actual item. And the typography is also shown on the letterhead. So I think it's good to show those different applications. I like to keep the same physical items because if you show them like a tote bag, a backpack, and then a duffel bag, they might get really set on that they want a backpack and then pick that brand because they think that's the only one that can do a backpack. If you show the same throughout, then they'll know like that can look different later, and that's something you'll have to explain because as a creative, you'll have to kind of branch for them because they might not do that. Your last slide should be your logos on a white background and just black, or you could do black on white, or just something very simple to keep them all the same. Some people do color here, but I just feel like it works best if they're kept simple, so you can sit there and talk with the client about what they like, what they dislike, and I'm sure they'll have feedback for you later because clients always have feedback for you. And so it just kind of ends on like kind of cleansing the palate at the end, just something very simple. My third point I want to make, which sounds kind of silly and something you'd probably expect, is to be confident in your work. Because if you're not confident in what you're presenting, there's no way your client's going to be confident in what you're showing them. And so, one way to do that is to make sure that you have done all of your research beforehand. You need to know what other brands look like in their market. And so, if everybody else has a blue logo, do you also want to make a blue logo? Or does your client want to stand out? That's something you'll have to ask them probably during the project brief at the very beginning. You'll also want to make sure that if they do want to stand out, how much do they want to stand out? Like if it's a yoga studio, how far do they want to go? You just really need to know what's out there and what already exists. And if you're trying to fit into that, that will help you be confident because then when you're presenting, you'll know if it's kind of in the right realm of what they're looking for. You'll also kind of want to make sure that you don't talk negative about any of your work. As soon as you say something negative about your work, it's obvious that your client's not going to like it because you obviously don't like it. And so if you got to make sure you speak positively about what you've made because they're hiring you to make that. And so you need to like it. You also have to be okay with them picking any 3 of the options you show them. Obviously, you'll probably have a favorite, but you have to be okay with them picking any of those because there's a chance they might. And so make sure when you're presenting, you feel confident in that work and that you're confident in what they'll choose. It's okay if there's some tension there of like client feedback because that's bound to happen. That's just kind of how it always goes. And you have to be accepting of that and like talk through it, but also know that the client is always right. And so, kind of just key takeaways to kind of wrap this up is that your presentation, the delivery package, what you're giving them, what you're showing them, should ultimately be pretty simple besides the designs. Black and white and 1 or 2 logos or one or 2 fonts is The easiest way to do it, I think, making sure it's widescreen, that's something I didn't say before, but the right dimensions for where you're presenting, because if it's really tiny on screen, they can't see it, but just kind of really think through the delivery package because that can kind of help sell it. The second point I kind of want to use as a key takeaway is make sure you show 3 different concepts, make sure they are drastically different, and make sure that you actually do like them. It's okay if they don't pick one. Just because they don't pick one doesn't mean it's a bad design because you might be competing with other studios, but you have to, lastly, lead it with confidence. You have to like your own work. And so I think that's about all I have. So if you have any questions, comments, critiques, or anything, my email is up there, sierrahunter0519@gmail.com. And I hope this has been helpful and can help you guys give successful brand presentations in the future and really sell to your client what you've made for them. So, bye.